This is Alcohol Freedom Finders. After a career in advertising for big alcohol, our guest, Adam Murphy, blows the whistle on his former employers, comparing their methods for selling a known cancer-causing agent to those of big tobacco. He describes how governments are powerless because they're also invested in the success of our alcohol companies. We sell a product they know kills consumers, and we, the consumers, are auto-enrolled into a drinking culture that often feels inescapable. We'll also hear how Adam escaped his work with big alcohol and found alcohol freedom for himself. But before that, Justine and I catch up on what's been going on in our lives, my alcohol flashback at a network event, and Justine's coaching skills making her an expert guest on another podcast. Let's dive in.
Hi.
Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm really well today. I'm great.
Excellent.
Having already done one podcast for the day.
Uh-huh.
How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I had a sort of funny experience this week. I went to a networking thing and got suddenly sort of a bit of a flashback to how things used to be and how I used to feel the need to drink in order to get through those kind of occasions. And it made me see things in a very different way now. You sort of realize, watching other people, how they also use alcohol to get through, that it kind of works against you in a way. Cause after a while, your initial anxiety and that we all feel as we meet new people and want to make a good impression, that calms down, and you become able to be more authentic and be yourself and relax into it. But
exactly.
when I was drinking in the past, you're actually sort of telling yourself you're not able to do that. And you're kind of trying to let yourself not care about your anxiety rather than deal with it. It's interesting.
Yes. It's kind of what we were talking about the other day, is realizing that leaning into yourself is a greater reward, being able to overcome the discomfort and then realize that you can do it and you could do it better. Today, I just did another podcast, which is amazing, for a functional medicine practitioner who brought me on board as a wellbeing coach. So I was speaking to how without alcohol in my life, regulating my nervous system is so much easier. That jangled feeling that we get. So not only am I not drinking alcohol at the event that you're talking about, I don't have that jangled feeling that I sort of could call it anxiety. We could call it nerves, that up and down feeling all the time. So what I was speaking to you about is how having a coach really helps to work out the things that we need as individuals to calm our nervous system. And whether that's, hands-on therapy or meditation or talking therapy. And it was exciting to be the expert. I was like, oh my Lord, I'm now, being free from alcohol has led me to realize that I am an expert and I do know my stuff, and people want to hear what I have to say.
For sure.
And that's revelation.
Okay, welcome everybody to Alcohol Freedom Finders with me, Barry Condon, and my amazing colleague, Justine Clark. Today, we're really excited because we have Adam Murphy with us, and Adam is a former advertising exec and now an integrated psychotherapist and also a coach in the alcohol-free area. So Adam, welcome, and nice to see you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm really curious about how you managed to get to this part of your career that you are now doing this. So what led you to working in the alcohol-free space and working in the way that you do?
It sort of goes quite a long way back, really. But I guess the sort of to rather than starting at the beginning, sort of at the end, I left my advertising career at the beginning of 2023, and towards the very end of it, one of my main clients was a large alcohol company on the FTSE, Diageo, and within my role there, I was actually working on the launch of Guinness Zero. So I was party to lots of data and information in and around the alcohol-free space. So that was kind of one of the final elements pushed me into not only recognizing the size of the market and the opportunity, but also being exposed to some of the data as well as the motivation to some of these companies. So yeah, that was one of the. We'll probably go back. Yeah, that was one of the multitude of different factors that ended up pushing me into this space. And yeah, I'm just delighted I am really. I've spent a life in advertising, which is essentially creating false needs that need to be fulfilled by insert company's product, which was fine in terms of my sort of aspirations and what I wanted to do as a young man. But it was increasingly counter to the way that I saw myself and how it sat with my own values as I got older. So yeah, it was an industry that was really at odds with what my beliefs, and yeah, and then I was working in alcohol, tobacco, oil, and pharma at the end. So yeah, sort of four of the kind of worst sectors really. So yeah, pushed me into exploring something different. Now I'm into alcohol-free, which means not only helping people on their own alcohol-free journeys, but also a large part of it is education as well. As education as to why this product is out there as it is, why it's communicated the way it is. I've got lots of sort of kind of, I hate the term, but poacher turned gamekeeper kind of insight, which is really useful.
That's amazing. Two questions really. I mean, I'd be excited to understand more about the data and the information and the sort of insider sort of communications, how the alcohol companies look to alcohol-free products now, and the way that they approach marketing in general. That would be interesting. But firstly, how long have you been alcohol-free, and how was that transition for you? How did you find alcohol freedom?
So I'm up to 16 months now. So yeah, last summer I stopped, and it was I'm sure there's kind of no one story, is there? Lots of people get their different ways, don't they? And I got from a health perspective, I got gout for the first time, which wasn't particularly sexy the way I got it.
If you're looking to take back control of your drinking, why don't you join our Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day group program? It's a great place to start because we approach it as an experiment rather than a challenge. Whereas, as well as getting a great detox, you learn the science and the psychology about why you're drunk in the first place. So whether you want to stop altogether or just become a more mindful and moderate drinker, why don't you give it a crack? Use the link in the show notes to sign up to our next Alcohol Freedom Finders 30-day program, and you won't regret it, because no one ever woke up in the morning and said, I wish I'd had more to drink last night, did they? Now, back to the episode.
My drink of choice used to be real ale, which is very yeast heavy, which, is what drives a lot of that. So my first gout flare up sort of triggered that actually something might not be right here. Within my industry, I mentioned before, I was doing lots of client entertaining, very social person, play a lot of sport, captain, run sports clubs, whatever. So I'd effectively built a lifestyle around alcohol for a very long time. And yeah, it got to the point where I have to recognize it was no longer serving me ultimately, and people talk about a rock bottom story, and mine doesn't really have that. But there was certainly a period when my wife was away, I was looking after my children, and essentially not really fulfilling some pretty basic duties, I guess. But it was a cumulative effect over the years. I'd been, again, sober curious is obviously a phrase that we use a lot. I've been sober curious for 6 years before I stopped. So that started with, a friend of mine. I went on holiday with him, and we started counting the units. So it's as basic as that, really. So from that moment, I now recognise that as soon as you start doing things like that, the penny's kind of beginning to drop, isn't it? And it's just how long you can move the people you're working with into that element of recognizing that you may want to change into actually changing. Reducing that time period is critical, I think. It took me 6 years. Some people, depending on where they fall off, get there much quicker, but I think that's a key part of it. So, so 16 months, But yeah, within that, there was periods of sobriety within those 6 years, areas where I thought, oh, I've cracked it, I don't need it anymore. And because ultimately I hadn't done the work, really, I was just, white knuckling it, which is another commonly used phrase. I hadn't actually made any of the changes in my life, and I hadn't actually changed the relationship with alcohol, which is what you have to do in order for it to have a sort of lasting effect.
That's awesome. I mean, that's what we talk about all the time. The difference, the willpower is actually a muscle. So, it's like hanging on to the edge of the cliff. You can hang on
Yeah.
there for a time, me not very long, but over time that muscle fatigues. And unless you are bringing the beliefs up underneath that actually creates that transformation, that lasting change doesn't happen. One thing that you just said to me really stood out, and you said to me that alcohol no longer served you. Knowing what you know in terms of marketing in the industry, and knowing what we know that society is actually telling us that alcohol serves us, my question to you is, did alcohol ever serve you?
Yes, I think it did. And we've got to be very careful of, wanting to erase our past. I had many great times with alcohol in my teenage years and early 20s, I think, and it gave me many great memories, which I'm glad I had. Yes, I probably took it to excess during those times, but yeah, I think it did serve as a way of driving an experience and shared experience at the time. So yeah, I certainly don't regret those moments, but I think it is also important to say that I can kind of pinpoint the area where it did begin to stop serving me, and how long it took for me to actually act on that. I recognize now that I think I had a go, or it must have been, again, my lifestyle was, I would be doing lots of client entertaining, so it would be days after days after days. I was in my early 30s, so sort of 15 years ago. I sort of had a good sort of crack at doing it for a couple of weeks and recognizing that it wasn't serving me, but ultimately, the ego was too big for it to stick. And now I'm on the other side of it, recognizing the egoic behavior is a key part of moving into a lifestyle that is sustainable without alcohol. So yes, I do believe it was serving me at the beginning, but certainly not towards the end, and certainly not for many years towards the end. And I think that's for people who are considering giving up. I think it's trying to help people recognize when that point is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's diminishing returns, and I don't know whether that's age or just that we become more and more immune to the sort of euphoric effects that it has in the early days. And I certainly see it in myself looking back, and I see it in friends still that drink a lot, that they just seem to get less and less out of it. And it's very difficult to watch sometimes. The people that seem to drink an awful lot don't seem to change a great deal, but they seem to need it. And you just think, oh, it would be so nice if you could understand that it's holding you back, and you'll feel so much better if you just let it go. Everybody has to find their own path, and everybody, needs to do it in their own way and in their own, at their own, pace. But yeah, to tell us some gory details about advertising and how those dodgy people at Diageo, try and trick us into
Well, it's obviously the fault of the consumer, isn't it? You should be drinking responsibly.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tricky space, isn't it? It's they're obviously aware that what they're selling is a poisonous substance to public health, and doing everything they can to not recognise that in the public space is essential, really. Which is why you pushing the onus onto the consumer, which is why you never see anybody suffering from the effects of consuming their product, and it's the relationship with alcohol and society is a very complex one, and I think it's very important to understand not only the impact of large companies promoting alcohol, but also where these large companies sit within public policy within our own government, not just our government, other governments around the world. It's a sizable sizable company on the FTSE, it would make up a significant proportion of its shares would be held by pension companies, which means that the government is invested in the success of these alcohol companies. So that's just a sort of very crude top line sort of look into exactly how intertwined some of these things are. And for that reason, you've just got to be, as a consumer, you need to be highly aware of the motivations of any company, especially ones that are in this sort of space. Their only motivation is to deliver. They'll call it deliver value to shareholders, which ultimately means to drive profit, and they'll do it by any means possible. Alcohol is a regulated market in terms of how it's produced and who it's sold to. But I think pretty much everyone who's listened to this was probably drinking or had experience drinking below the age of 18. And there's all manner of methods and techniques used to make the product more attractive. So I've obviously been involved in lots of so when you're producing casting, you don't obviously cast ugly people. You don't cast people who aren't having a good time. You don't cast people who are sat in their pants watching the same fishing video for the fourth time on a night. And it's seen as a highly aspirational lifestyle, and that's what people buy into. And it's in terms of the marketing dollars that are spent, we just think of the TV ads, the outdoor, and maybe bits that we've seen in newspapers, but it goes much deeper than that. How the lie is pushed into all areas of culture. And now, working in the sector that I do, you just see it in all sorts of, like, the movies and whatever. I've got a daughter who's 10, who we let her watch 12s. So I guess we shouldn't do that, but we let her watch 12s. But even at that sort of rating, the amount of times there's reference to doing shots, people in parties, and alcohol being seen as the elixir to life and good times. And it's it makes it really, really tricky when like ourselves, when we've been born into countries and a culture where we've in effect been auto-enrolled into a culture of drinking, to then start to look beyond that is very, very complex, especially when you've got all of these cultural cues through advertising just being thrown at you constantly. You're seen as odd if you don't partake. And I think that's one of the big things in and around the clients I work with, is just sort of recognizing that you are leaving the tribe to a certain degree, and that is absolutely to be applauded, because the easiest thing is just to stay in it. And in fact, I'm sure lots of the people you work with have stayed in it for far too long for fear of rejection of the tribe. And this is just a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is spun out by the advertising companies to keep you involved. So it's a really complicated business. They're selling a product that they know kills consumers. I'm assuming you use these stats as well. It's a class 1 carcinogen, which puts it alongside asbestos, radiation, and tobacco. That means it's known to induce cancer. It has cancer-causing properties, confirmed. And what we're doing is we're selling versions of it, albeit at diluted quantities, to a public, which is just completely ludicrous. Completely ludicrous. And I think we can all recognise that the world is going to be a very different place in 50 years' time. And it's we are where we are at the moment, but it's important that we educate ourselves in and around that. And just whilst I'm talking about some of the comms techniques that advertising companies use, in the same way there's parallels. Unfortunately, I also worked in tobacco, and there are parallels in terms of the tobacco industry as well. So tobacco, if you think of tobacco use through the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was sold as a way of soothing throats in the 50s. And obviously known health issues, and they push health warnings onto cigarette packs, which we then got the no smoking in pubs, and quite clearly there's a push to do that within alcohol as well. So I was working alongside a department in the business who were charged with lobbying European governments around packaging, and that means to keep off the warning signs on the bottles. Alcohol kills you. There's all manner of stats you can put up there. In 20 years' time, they'll probably have a picture of a bloated liver on there or something. Anyway, there is a requirement or the lobbying that happens within, and it's not just the company that I was working for. It's every large alcohol company, all lobbying the governments to ensure that the health ministers don't push through these warnings on the bottles. So then, you've got to understand who's making this decision. Like, these decisions aren't being made in the best interest of the public, because as soon as that warning goes on, the profits are only going to go one way in these alcohol companies, as they did in tobacco companies. The drinking base is reducing year on year. I saw wine was down 3% on 2002 to 2003, which I thought was quite interesting. We know that the younger consumers aren't consuming alcohol in the same way. As soon as these warning labels hit the bottles, then it's obviously going to massively impact their business. Interestingly, in Europe, the only country that managed to push it through were Ireland, and Ireland were also the innovator with smoking as well. They were the first ones to put the warnings on the packs and also to ban smoking in pubs. So yeah, there's going to be warnings on the bottles in Ireland coming in the next couple of years, and everyone in Europe will be sat on their hands just to see how that goes, basically. But in the meantime, lots of governments will be taking the money offered by various large alcohol companies in order to, I guess they'll call it, fund pet projects of ministers, or, an investment in the health department, whatever way you want to describe it. I'll be careful with the terms I use, but it's corporate lobbying, which is to effectively suppress the truth of the impact of the product.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And if a consumer wants to sort of, or one of our potential clients wants to find the real stats and the real facts, have you got source information or a place where people can go and have a look at that for themselves that you can give to us?
Yeah, I've got some a sort of facts pack that I use. I mean, it's always good to use the WHO, World Health Organization. They're the sort of the best ones to sort of refer to with regards to health, I think. And in the same way that we ride roughshod over some of the positive claims that are made by alcohol companies, there's also lots of people who are against alcohol, who some of them do have dubious stats as well. So yeah, World Health Organization is always the go-to, I think, with any of this.
Good. And also, given that you've stated clearly that big business is involved, government is involved, and I love the fact that you called it auto-enrollment. So society auto-enrolls us into drinking. Where do you see us making the most significant headway and change and helping to affect, the turning of the tide?
But very good question. I think that comes, and it is a movement, and I think it comes from an individual basis. It happens with, by you not drinking, you're having a significant impact on 4 other people around you, and actions, as always, speak louder than words. In the same way that we were swept up with maybe our parents drinking or friends drinking, the same thing happens the other way, and it's I'm not one that's going to be going and banging the drum down to Downing Street or anything like that, because it's a superfluous action, But what I will be doing is, through my immediate actions, I will be seen as I will be recognized as being that person in and amongst my family and friends. And for me, that is very important. And I have no doubt, although they probably wouldn't say, within 10 years, that will be recognized as a reason why they've stopped drinking.
Love it.
Really good. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the more we can normalize it, the more we can make it's something that people can talk about and just see through us, that we're actually, we feel better off, we look better, we're happier and more energetic, and all the benefits that people can just see. So let's hear a little bit about who you're helping, how you're helping them, and what on earth is integrated psychotherapy.
So my target audience I work with, I work within another program as well, with a chap called Will Armstrong, and also James Malone, called the Teetotal Trail. And my target audience is very much people who have been drinking for over 20 years and alcohol is no longer serving them. So there's, aware that's quite a large sort of definition. It's very important to people that I work with that they've gone through at least a couple of years of sober curiosity. Does it suit them? Taking short breaks, things like that. And the reason for that is just to ensure maximum effect with the people that I'm working with. Within the Teetotal Trail, we also work with a lot of people who have substance abuse as well. Cocaine is rife in not only our country but across the Western world. It's a very taboo subject. Lots of people always like to talk about how its usage is increasing, but they don't know anyone who does it, and it certainly doesn't happen in their company. However, that is obviously not the case. And we work with a very wide range of people. Everyone who works within a particular sector thinks their sector must be the worst. As we found out, that all sectors are. It's in all sectors and it's across society. And lots of the usage, lots of cocaine usage is to extend drinking capacity and drinking time. There's not many people that I work with who are solely there for cocaine usage. So, alcohol really is the gateway drug to all of this, which just makes the fact that, we sell it in big crates at the front of the supermarket before you even get to the fruit and veg, and you can buy it in petrol stations now. The fact that it's the gateway drug to many bad decisions is just ludicrous. But its commercial success is obviously very important for the country. So that's why it's pushed the way it is. I generally work with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, looking to remove alcohol from their lives. And it has really good traction. I work in 3 and 6 month programs, and it's essentially about walking through key milestones with regards to undressing the glamour of advertising to start, making sure you understand where it sits in society and therefore your life. I do a lot of work from a psychological perspective, because self-identity is critical within this process, because many of us have grown up with alcohol. So, if I think about my own self-identity had a lot of alcohol in it, as I mentioned, and it's almost embarrassing to admit it was a large part of my personality, which I'm highly embarrassed to say now. We need to move through that self-identity of the individual. So I do a lot of psychological work, then it's into repetitions and implementations of the skill sets learned. So that's how the program works.
That's brilliant. So just as a practical session, what would a client have if they come to see you? What would happen?
It's not a short session. So I work on, as a top line, we work on identifying what are any unhealthy negative beliefs that are underpinning any behavior. That can take a while to come through. And from that, you're able to then, devise a sort of personalized program to help them understand why they drink or use the way they do, and then move beyond that. And lots of that is underpinned by, really good practice in exercise, nutrition, sleeping. Meditation's a large part of what I do. Hypnotherapy is a large part of what. So hypnotherapy, for those who don't know, is kind of like a clinical meditation. And meditation is a really big part of what I do. And lots of people, as you can obviously imagine, the type of people that present with challenges with alcohol or substances, lots of people like to say, I've got ADHD, or my mind goes a million miles an hour, which is obviously true, and it's recognizing that any sort of desires that arise in agitation are aligned with the ego. Yet, the desires that arise in stillness are those which are more aligned to what your soul, really, what sits in your subconscious. And that's why meditation is so important, because it provides that stillness. And lots of the answers come out when we align ourselves with what is in our subconscious. So that is why meditation and hypnotherapy is a key part of moving along or changing that self-identity, which is really important in making an alcohol-free lifestyle stick.
That's really interesting. I mean, I know that we focus a lot on the subconscious as well, and that kind of the cognitive dissonance that exists between our sort of executive higher brain that understands, that things aren't serving you anymore and that we're making bad decisions, and yet that the subconscious keeps telling us, "Well, go on, you'll feel better if you do," and that just sort of trying to understand and listen and stop the struggle is definitely, and I can imagine, that meditation and hypnosis could certainly allow people to access a pathway through all that. Why don't we ask the question that we ask all our guests to wrap this up? What are the 3 key words to you that sort of summarize how you and why you found alcohol freedom?
You shared this before, so I did make a little note. So the first one was courage, which is really important, I think, because lots of us are wrapped in very egoic behaviour to start with, and before stopping, we've usually tried to do a number of things within the world of moderation before we stop trying to control it in certain ways. So having that courage to really make the decision of I'm not moderating, it's no longer serving me, I've got to do something about it, and that first step is huge, and you're in a sort of bit of a whirlwind for the first couple of weeks when you try and come to terms with the size of the decision that you've made, as well as it being a very exciting period. It's like you're obviously stepping into the unknown, which is a bit wild. So courage is the first one. Presence is the next one. So just being so much more present in every area of my life, my relationships, my work. Again, I just we all have our past as our reference point, but I just recognize how my egoic behavior just meant that I wasn't present for a large part of it, albeit in the room, not there mentally. And longevity is a really important part of this. Again, it's a bit of a sort of overused phrase. Not just years to your life, but life to your years. I'm 46 now, and if I just think of the natural arc of life, I was stuck doing a job which I really detested, in an industry which I really detested. And my arc, I kind of just played out what my future looked like. I'm very lucky to be married with 2 daughters. And I just sort of played out the arc of my life, and, I'll carry on doing something which I really hate. And then eventually I'll stop doing it with it. And, alcohol was going to accompany me all the way there. And I kind of just accepted that. But getting rid of that now, like, so many things have changed in my life. And I'm very, very grateful for it. So longevity, we know it has a massive health impact. I mean, that from stopping just for 2 or 3 weeks, getting as far in as I am. And you guys, I know you guys are much further. You can just see the impact that it has on longevity.
Well, that's brilliant. So how could people find you to help them on their journey?
So I do a lot of my DMs are through Instagram. Present Life is my handle. So Present, PREZENT Life. You'll be able to see lots of my content up there. So DM me through there, and we can check it out.
Amazing.
Adam, thanks a lot. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for joining us.